Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Will Maurer, who is Brokerage Region Lead at NAPA Transportation, and Prasad Gollapalli, who is Founder, Strategic Advisor, and CCO at Trucker Tools. And today we're going to talk about how technology helps keep drivers safe while giving shippers the real-time visibility that they want. So where's my truck or shipment? When will it arrive? Is the truck available? I mean, those are the basic questions that companies have always asked, and answering them has traditionally involved, making check calls to carriers and drivers, throughout the day. So are you still operating that way? What problems or challenges does it create? And how can real-time visibility technology help? Well, those are the key questions we're going to discuss in today's episode. It's great to have Will and Prasad with us to share some insights and advice on this topic. So Will, Prasad, welcome to the program.
Yes, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, same here, Adrian. This is a great opportunity, and thanks for having me.
Great. Well, Will, you're a first-time guest on Talking Logistics, and I always like to, in case people are not familiar with some of the companies that we feature here, maybe before we dive into the topic, why don't you tell us a little bit about NAPA Transportation, a little bit about your operations and your role there?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. NAPA Transportation is a family-owned trucking business here in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. We have about 430 drivers that work for us. We have a terminal here in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania as our main hub. We also have a location in Columbus, Ohio, Harrisonburg, Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, also in Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania. So we have a pretty good foothold in the Northeast market, serving Central Pennsylvania, New England, Ohio, and the Southeast as well. So we've been in business since 1991, just recently celebrated our 30-year anniversary here at NAPA Transportation. We're an asset-based brokerage division. The brokerage division that I'm responsible for is Northeast Logistics. We've been operating a brokerage alongside NAPA Transportation for the past 10 years or so. We founded in 2011. So we've definitely grown a lot. I've been with the company here about 7 years on May 11th. So we're almost exactly at my 7-year anniversary mark here with the company. When I started here personally, the brokerage department was about a 4-person department. And we currently employ approximately 22 people on our staff, and we have more in the pipeline. So we've definitely grown a lot over the past few years, especially since I've been here. From a revenue standpoint, book loads, and personnel. So a lot of great opportunity here at NAPA Transportation. Have a bright future ahead of ourselves. Trucker Tools has definitely been a part of that for us as far as helping us get to where we are now. I'm sure we'll cover some of that in the later part in the interview here, but we're a family company, privately owned business. The brokerage department works alongside the NAPA Transportation asset side of the business. We share a lot of the same customers. We do have some brokerage specific accounts, but for the most part, a lot of the customers that we deal with, we share both with the Northeast Logistics brokerage side and NAPA Transportation as well.
Wow, great. Well, first of all, 30 years, great milestone. Coming up on your, is it 7 years or 8 years coming up May 11th?
For me personally, I'll be here 7 years on May 11th. Yeah,
7 years. So an early, happy anniversary on that, and certainly great growth both on the asset side of the business, but obviously on the brokerage side as well, as you talked about. So, you've certainly seen over the past decade, a lot of change in this industry with regards to the ups and downs of the market. But let's start, to get started with the conversation, let's start before you implemented, Trucker Tools. I mean, what were some of the challenges or opportunities for improvement that led you to search for a solution?
Well, a lot of that was driven by our customers, to be honest with you. Carriers or customers, shippers wanted visibility to their shipments, real time. So that was really the driving force behind getting us on board with a technology partner that would help us meet our customers' needs. And also, once we onboarded and satisfied our customers' need to have visibility to the loads, we really started seeing the benefits from a tracking and tracing standpoint that came along with the visibility that we had now gained access to by able to see our trucks in real time where our loads were in transit. But to go back to before we started Trucker Tools, we spent a lot of time babysitting loads, making a lot of phone calls to drivers, carriers, to be quite honest, sweating sometimes whether or not somebody was actually on the way to pick up a load, or we didn't know if the load was going to show up on time at the receiver. There was a lot of guesswork involved in our check call process before we had a technology partner like Trucker Tools to help give us visibility to those loads. So also, we were a little bit smaller of an organization, so it was somewhat more manageable. I cannot imagine getting to the size that we are now without having Trucker Tools as a partner to help us, satisfy our customers' needs to have that visibility, and also it gives us the peace of mind to know that the loads are where they're supposed to be. And if we find that they're not, then we have the ability to be proactive and take action to make sure we can find recovery solutions to the loads, or implement different strategies to make sure the load gets delivered on time. But it was definitely a different environment. Also too with drivers, 4 or 5 years ago before we started with you guys, a lot of drivers were still not used to the idea of having an application on their phone that they had to use to be able to be tracked. And so there was a little bit of a learning curve that we've kind of, I think, gotten to or past at this point, where most of the carriers and drivers that we work with now are familiar with that process and are comfortable with being able to share their location services. So we have visibility to that. And they also are seeing the benefits as well from a carrier standpoint. But it's definitely been a big transition coming to this point from where we were a few years ago. And what we were doing 4 years ago would not have been sustainable now at the size that we have our business currently.
Yeah, you hear a lot about, companies such as yours looking to drive scalable, profitable growth, right? Mm-hmm. And profitability is always a key point, especially with the ups and downs of the market. So when you think about your growth and you think about kind of the manual-oriented way that you used to operate 4 or 5 years ago, you would probably need double the amount of people that you have now, at the size of your business to be able to do all those phone calls and all that tracking, but not necessarily the right kind of growth. It's more growth because you just need the hands and the ears to make all those phone calls, really impacting your profitability if you really hadn't implemented, technology.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of curious, the comment about the driver adoption and carrier adoption. Did you start off, or I would assume that you probably started off first with the NAPA drivers and the asset side of your business to kind of test the technology out a little bit and then rolled it out to others? I mean, how did the rollout go?
So just to be clear, the Trucker Tools platform is currently only being deployed with our brokerage business. We have our own ELD providers on our NAPA trucks that we use for GPS visibility. I believe we're only focused on the brokerage side of the business with your solution at this time.
Okay, great. Okay, just but I would assume that it's always the case with this initial resistance, to any kind of technology or changing the way things done, and there's a lot of understandable, people don't want to be, big brother, looking over them. But what I've found in talking to, companies that have implemented these solutions over the years is that there's initial resistance, there's initial work that needs to be done to get the buy-in, but then once they see the benefits. If you try to take the technology away from them, they'll say, wait, no, we don't want to go back to the old ways. I mean, do you concur, or is that do you think that's the same in your case?
Yeah, we certainly see that. I mean, we've deployed new technology solutions on our driver asset side that have been, not say slow to adapt, but, drive cam, technology for driver safety, some of those things where, we've met some resistance at first, but once the drivers recognize the benefits to them from a safety standpoint, liability standpoint, they start to see that it's beneficial to them. And I've definitely noticed from a GPS tracking or ELD tracking that we implement on the brokerage side, the drivers are familiar with the process and they recognize the benefits of the app and of having the tracking that results in less frequent phone calls from us to interrupt their either driving or their break time. If they're off duty, we really don't like bothering drivers when they're not working, but we would do that before Trucker Tools to make sure that the loads were where they needed to be. But with the software now, we can sell them, the drivers, on the benefit of not having to be pestering them as often as we maybe used to, because we can just see through the Trucker Tools platform where the loads are, and gives us the peace of mind to know that the loads are where they need to be. And if there's something that we need to do to take action on it, we'll certainly call them, but we don't want to bother the drivers any more than necessary to make sure we get the updates that we need.
Right. Well, Prasad, that brings me, to you, perfect transition here. I mean, I've heard it said that, check calls are the bane of every trucker's, existence. Why is that? I mean, what problems or challenges do they create?
Adrian, first of all, thanks for having this conversation, and Will, happy anniversary coming up soon for you, the seventh anniversary. Adrian, going to your question about the check calls, the biggest way somebody looks at check calls, especially on the carrier side, you mentioned about this big brothering, right? So for a truck driver, a broker or someone calling him every hour and asking where he is, just pesters him. It's got a trust issue from his viewpoint. So the guy is driving and he says, well, I'm out north of Richmond, right? And an hour later, the broker calls and says, where are you, let's say, right? And he says, well, I'm just entering Richmond. Oh, so it took you an hour, you're still there, right? Traffic, right? He's stuck in traffic. So from his viewpoint, hey, why are you calling me, pestering me like this? This is big brothering me every second. You're like, I could pull my truck to, to eat lunch, and you're asking me why, right? It basically over years has developed a connotation where it's like literally check calls are considered as big brothering me. Why are you? Unlike, so there's so much resistance from truckers. That on that side, right? The second part, I know we touch on this a little bit, is the safety issue, right? I mean, when a trucker gets on a call, you're just taking his attention away from the road, right? That's not something that the brokers would like to do, right? In the absence of no technology, right? Like there's no technology, check calls were the only way to find out where the truck is, because like Will said, shippers need where their load is, right? If there are exceptions, they need to know quickly. But with the technology, we could circumvent this whole risk of calling the driver. So that's an important thing. I would like to shift a little bit onto the broker side too on that same question, right? When we talk about check calls are like, it's not just hated by carriers, but actually brokers also don't like it. So the way we look at that is, imagine Bill going to a college graduate and saying, hey, come and work for NAPA Logistics or Transportation. All day, all you're going to do is call this driver or drivers and mark that in our system. That 20-year-old is going to look at Will and say, well, have you not heard about a technology called tracking, right? Why should I be killing job that he could sell, right? So that's the first part. The second part is, the trust part of it, right? Trucks not moving, stuck in the traffic, things like that. Will said it very well. We were not sure if a load is going to be picked up on time or not. That's a real concern for brokers, right? Because when a shipper gives a load to the broker is pretty much, has the responsibility to make sure it's picked up on time. When that's not done, that relationship between the shipper and the broker is going to get questioned and disrupted, and KPIs, and there's monetary aspects of it that are included, right? So this is in a technology less solution where it's manual check calls, it becomes really a pain for brokers. So the technology has appeal for both, not just the carriers to eliminate this big brothering, but also for brokers.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think I've heard stories from both sides, over the years, and I think that's one of the things that people love the most about the technology right now, to be able to move away from that and really focus their resources. From the standpoint of the driver, obviously it's to drive safely, do what they need to do to, stay on time and so forth. But also for the brokers, focusing their resources on the things that are, most important and are going to drive the most value to the business, the most value to the customers and so forth. So Will, back to you. So now tell us a little bit about how you're actually using, trucker tools in your operations. And then what benefits, has the technology provided? Let's look at it from three perspectives: to your employees, your carrier partners, and then ultimately your shipper customers.
Yeah, so from an employee standpoint, to your point there, Prasad, it allows our team to be more focused on, revenue driving, business opportunities, forward type thinking investments in the carriers and in our business, rather than having to be reactive to checking on loads all the time. So you're right, brokers do not like check calls. We want to be focused on trying to find more customers, finding better lanes, driving utilization with our carriers that we're currently working with, and trying to develop carrier relationships. So kind of more of a forward-thinking process. We've found a lot of success with implementing trucker tools in our department by making it a requirement for our carriers to do our loads. So when we qualify a carrier that wants to book a load with us, we are upfront about the fact that we require trucker tools tracking on our loads. And we have a lot of buy-in from our carriers, and that's great. We get that resolved up front. That way we're not having to deal with trying to work out whether or not the carrier is going to use the trucker tools after the fact. So we one of our reasons our compliance numbers are pretty good with trucker tools as far as the tracking percentage is because we are clear up front what the carrier is, what we expect of them when they book the loads. Additionally, one of the things we've also done is make sure that the pickup number that the drivers needs is available to them only through the app. So that's another way that we get the drivers to use the app is the trucker tools tracking is required to get access to the pickup number, which you need at the shipper. That also eliminates the need for that first check call. Oftentimes from the driver, it's like, hey, what's the pickup number? Or I'm at the shipper. It's like we already can get that all information all up front just because of the compliance up front. But the way we're using the technology is really to give ourselves peace of mind. That's the biggest thing. We do deploy logistics coordinators that their job function solely is geared towards tracking and tracing the loads. So they do spend a lot of time in the trucker tools platform and monitor for issues with drivers running late, and then escalate as necessary if they find that there are loads that are at risk of missing delivery, or they identify there might be a potential breakdown issue with the truck maybe stuck or hasn't moved from their current location in over 12 hours. That's a sign that we need to be involved in the process a little more closely. So we are very involved in that. The drivers, we use the trucker tools platform for paperwork acquisition. One of the features that we deploy with you guys is the ability to have drivers upload PODs or lumper receipts through the app, which then eliminates the other paperwork tracking down part of the job that we don't like doing necessarily, is tracking down the paperwork stuff. But the drivers have the ability to upload PODs, lumper receipts in the app, which then gives us visibility to it. We have a back-end process with our billing department where they now see that information, and it saves them and us time for having to reach out to carriers after the fact to get that information. So that's kind of how we're deploying the technology with our business. From a customer standpoint, like I said earlier, that visibility that they require is now satisfied by being able to provide the trucker tools tracking information to them real time, so they can see where their loads are at and have the confidence that the loads are going to get delivered. And obviously, if there's something out of the ordinary or an exception to that, our customers expect us to inform them of those issues, and we now have better ability to catch that stuff because we have tracking. So it's a win-win from my perspective, from the carrier side, the customer side, the broker side. It really helps drive our business and makes things a lot easier for us.
Great. It seems like we've been talking about kind of visibility and tracking, but in your comments there, you really focused in on other areas, right? I mean, there's a lot of waste and inefficiency that takes place with a lot of manual processing or paperwork that goes back and forth. So, the ability to electronically upload documents, really significantly, reduces, the labor associated with that. And from the carrier standpoint, it helps them get paid faster, I would assume. So, that benefits them as well, because it's all about cash flow, for a lot of those folks. And ultimately, the more waste and inefficiencies you can eliminate from the system, like you said, helps you to focus your resources on what matters most. Prasad, going back to you now, and I'm going to shift gears just slightly here. There's a lot of discussion at the moment, on whether the U.S. trucking market is heading to a recession or not. And we don't have to go into the details. I'm kind of curious in terms of what your perspective is or what you're hearing from your, clients. And Will, you can provide your perspective afterwards. But does the business case for everything we've talking about right now with digital transformation change depending on whether we're in a growing or a slowing market?
So the first question, I think, whoever can predict this more accurately, that person should be, buying lottery tickets. I've heard this, some good friends, great analysts in our industry have predicted there's going to be some recession. Some said, hey, it's not going to be that much, maybe a small, slowness. And I've also customer side, some customers said, hey, there's a little bit softness in freight. Some said, hey, what do you mean by softness? We're doing record months, right? In my viewpoint, and Adrian, we've been in this industry for many years. We are in an industry, it's not a one tale, right? Like it's not one story that goes across the board. There are many pockets and many types of freight, what are we talking about, right? So I can't really say whether this way or that way. I'm as curious, but I also feel like there's going to be a little bit of it's not going to grow that much. Everybody's talking about it's not growing at the same rate it has grown the last 2 years, right? Or less than 2 years. That's going to slightly change for a little bit, and maybe again it will pick up. That's what I'm assuming. And for our audience, please take that with a grain of salt. I'm not an analyst. I'm an audience when it comes to listening to this. But your second part of the question is extremely important, Adrian, because what you said is, how is the digital transformation affecting if the market is going in recession versus not? That part, they're totally decoupled in my point. And the reason I would say that is, say for example, whether we have more trucks in the space or there are less trucks, or there is a capacity crunch on one end of the spectrum, capacity really softness on the other end of the spectrum. Those are how the swing happens, right? But we are used to, as an industry, we are used to these peaks and valleys 2 or 3 times a year, right? So just because something goes up and the capacity is tight doesn't mean that all of a sudden there's more technology that needs to come in. It's more affecting the rates as opposed to the technology side. Similarly, when the capacity becomes softer, it's mostly affecting the rates. Right? But that said, technology curve is on a different timeline, and we've already started that. So as Will said earlier, we're trying to really optimize, generate efficiencies using technology, and not have to, so the example he gave is absolutely great. Getting those lumper receipts on time, if there is a discrepancy, we can just quickly get that resolved while the trucker is still at the gate, right? These things, the technology, what can technology do is really create efficiencies for brokerage, which translates into efficiencies for the shipper, efficiencies for the carrier. In a time like this, let's assume that we are going into a little bit of a recession, freight recession. That's really, now the same can be said in the same tone. If we go into a capacity crunch, yes, it's really important. Because all the players, when these peaks and valleys come in picture, we really lean on technology to help us through those. And in many ways, we are in the early stages of digital transformation. Next 5-10 years, I expect this is going to happen at rapid pace. We've heard the stories of some, technology brokers, but everyone is a technology broker, right? This is a part I want to really say this loud and, I want our audience to hear, at least my viewpoint is, not just because a broker started with technology and became a broker doesn't mean they are technology brokers. Brokers like NAPA Transportation, they all do a lot of technology in-house adoption that make them really tech-enabled brokers. And it's just that we're not using that word as much as we should, in my view.
Yeah, a lot of great points there. I mean, I think, from my perspective, particularly any kind of transportation technology, it's almost like agnostic to the current market conditions, right? Because when things are soft, let's say, and the focus might be a little bit more on cost reduction, well, technology is going to help you with cost reduction because it's going to help you, with, again, taking away waste and inefficiencies and so forth. And people can do more with, you can do more with less, right? But then in times of hyper growth, technology is going to help you scale, right? And grow profitably, right? So I think both sides. I mean, I think there's a strong business case, regardless of what the market conditions are. Will, any quick thoughts on your perspective on the question and what Prasad mentioned?
Well, I think, excuse me, the technology's here. It's already being used and integrated with the carriers. I don't see it going the opposite, going back from here. I guess what the future holds from a technology standpoint, I'm not sure. I'm pretty bullish on the freight market in general. We ship a lot of food and commodity type products, so there is I don't want to say some recession proofness to our business. That's not always the case, but we've been very fortunate in the fact that there's been a lot of demand for the products that we ship because of the nature of the goods that we haul. So I just see that there'd be more integration down the road with the technology deploying in different ways with the trucks, digital freight matching. I just see there's a lot of opportunity there, and as more carriers and brokers get comfortable with the process and understand the benefits of using the freight matching platforms that we have at our disposal, then I just don't see it slowing down anytime soon. I think if anything, there's going to be more of a demand or need for it moving forward as people's, they're trying to match all the different needs between shippers, carriers, brokers, all those pieces of the puzzle. The thing that kind of binds us now today is the technology. So without that, it's very difficult to move forward. So I see that there's probably more potential for it, and I don't see it, slowing down anytime soon.
Right. Yeah, well, great point. Well, as a way to wrap up, then, Will, I'll start with you, and then Prasad, you can, close us out here. What advice, Will, would you give to other companies that are just starting on their, digital transformation journey? How should they get started? Any mistakes or things that they should avoid?
Well, yeah, they certainly do need to get started at this point. I feel like if you're thinking about it, you need to get on board, because that's where things are moving. Like I said, carriers are already familiar with a lot of the technology platforms. I know there's competitors out there that have different solutions, but for the most part, I found that carriers are familiar with and comfortable with the idea of using tracking technology and an app on their phone to be able to have real-time visibility to their location. So I think that's a hurdle that's sort of already been maybe cleared by a lot of brokers over the past few years. At least I've seen that in my personal experience. I remember seeing a lot more resistance with the idea a few years ago, but now it's kind of just like, all right, we're going to do it. This is what the brokers need and require of me to be able to haul load. So if you're a truck operating in North America now, you're going to be asked to have some type of tracking technology software deployed for the load. I think Trucker Tools is a good solution for that, and I think that if other brokers or other shippers are looking to get into the space, I think they should start to analyze how much inefficiencies they have, or what are they actually doing now that's preventing them from, getting to the growth levels that they need, and identifying where, maybe where they're spending too much time on, manual tracking of loads, and figure out a way to create more efficiencies in that process. There was a little bit of a learning curve for us. I would say to any other broker or shipper that's looking to get involved with the technology platform provider, you have an open mind. There's going to be maybe some technology hurdles, whether through integration with your TMS software, training with your team that you need to have onboarded. So one of the things I've seen over the past few years since I've been here is I've helped a lot of the new staff on my team at least become familiar with the platform and understanding the benefits of it. So I kind of have to sell my team on it too, and how this platform benefits them. So if somebody's in a position of making a decision to whether or not to deploy that technology for their team, I would say that gain the trust of your team and your department to show them that they have a lot of things to benefit from by using a technology platform such as Trucker Tools, and just to get started. I mean, I think right now it's like now's the time to do it. There's always there's a lot of carriers out there looking for freight. It's a good market to be in from a freight broker standpoint currently right now. And if you're not currently using a technology partner to provide tracking visibility, you definitely should. It's the time to do it.
Great, a lot of great words of advice there. So, certainly, I would argue you probably should have been started already a few years back. But secondly, you brought up some great points in terms of considering integration points and training, and the importance of training and communicating that. I think those are great words of advice. Prasad, anything to add to what Will just said?
Will said it very well, and Will, thank you very much for all the kind words you have about Trucker Tools, and we definitely appreciate you as a great customer. For our audience, especially on the visibility side, what Will said, totally support that. In addition, I would also add, when you look at technology, don't think the technology is going to replace all your checkpoints overnight. But you will start at your compliance at some percentage. It's between, I don't know, maybe I don't want to use 0 and 100, knowing what's happening. It's somewhere over 60% to maybe 80%, somewhere in that range you will start. And from that point onwards, have realistic goals on, you want to see your graph go up to over 90%. 100% is going to be always difficult, especially there's going to be one or two carriers who don't want to be tracked at all, right? So getting it to over 90% is good. We have seen customers that kind of consistently get high 90s, but they have built it up to that point, right? So that's my first point. The second point is, we definitely would want, Bill's point is absolutely good, and Adrian, you made the same point. You should have already adopted technology, right? So when you buy technology, don't just buy it as I bought it off the shelf, this is it. But when you buy it, like, certain things that NAPA Transportation have done is marvelous, where they looked at what other things can this technology do. I can get, lumper receipts, so I can eliminate that work process. I can send the pickup number, so I can eliminate that part of the conversation with the carrier. So look for ways to get best out of the technology. And in that context, if you're looking at Trucker Tools, we'd love to have you as our customer, and we can educate this. But even if you're talking to other vendors, ask them. The vendor should know what are the best ways to use their software, right? This is a very important question. You're putting the onus back on the vendor to come up with the best practices and the best ways to use their software. The third one, look for a vendor that consistently improves their product, because you don't want to buy a technology that's outdated, right? Or it needs to be upgraded. And the fourth point is definitely look for what happens when the technology doesn't work. Is there a support or a training in place? What's your customer success plan looks like? This is an extremely important questions to ask your vendor, because you're establishing a working relationship with your vendor, and that cadence helps your team. Like, Will is a good example. He purchased the software, but his team is actually using it every single day. And when they have an issue, they shouldn't be lost on an island, right? So these are important things for customers out there, and definitely we welcome any new customers who are looking to adopt to technology. I know it's late, but come on board quickly with Truckers.
Very well. Thank you both. You both provided some great, words of advice and things to think about if you're just getting started on this journey. And I think we covered a lot of ground as well on, everything from, visibility to, the challenges and the problems with, check calls, and then all the benefits beyond visibility. I think Prasad just mentioned that, thinking visibility is a core part of the value proposition, but you do have things like electronic document collection. You do have like freight matching that you talked about a little bit, Will. I mean, there's so many other aspects to the technology that are helping to, again, drive efficiencies, take waste out of the process, and help, companies such as NAPA, grow profitably. So again, thank you both for making the time to be with us today and sharing your insights and advice on this topic. So again, Will, Prasad, thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you.
Appreciate the time and having me.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the Trucker Tools website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Will or Prasad, you can post it there. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.